How to make a mixtape.
Now, the making of a good compilation tape is a very subtle art, many do's and don'ts. First of all, you're using someone else's poetry to express how you feel. This is a delicate thing. You gotta kick it off with a killer, grab attention. Then you gotta take it up a notch. But you don't want to blow your wad, so then you gotta cool it off a notch. There are a lot of rules.
All right. Welcome to How to Make a Mixtape podcast. I am Roderick. As always, I'm here with Don. How's it going, man?
Hey, buddy. I'm very flushed in my video right now.
Yeah, you're looking kind of washed out. I can't even really see your face.
Yeah, you're not missing much. I'll tell you that much for sure.
Oh, no, don't be so hard on yourself. You're a good-looking man.
I thought that was a funny little jab, but
this is our second in a row recording in the morning. We were night owls until recently.
Dude, that was going to be my first question. Are you an early bird or a night owl?
I'm not an early bird, and this is hard for me, dude. Like, I'm exhausted right now. And
oh man, I feel like $1 million. I feel like I could take on the whole world today.
Well, I mean, I'm down to do mornings, and I think other people are too. I know our guest today is a morning person too. It's not me. I like the nighttime ones.
Yeah.
Feel like my brain hasn't woken up. So we'll see if I make any sense today or if Ryan
Runge will tell you that the early worm gets eaten alive, but I mean, I'm here for it. I've always been this way. And what's funny is that like I hit a point in time around like 8:30 where I am just a grouchy Gus. Just like, I'm tired. I want to go to bed now.
Yeah. Well, I hit that too, though. That's the problem. I'm not a morning person or an afternoon person. But there is probably a point where you're wanting to go to bed where I'm just starting to get.
You're just finding your groove.
Well, here's the issue: it's because I've got like a very creative brain, and that tends to kick into gear at night, like when the sun goes down, which is a real thing a lot of people say. So like I start getting ideas and feeling creative and motivated at night. The problem is now that I'm in my 40s, I'm also getting tired at that same time. So I'm like, ooh, I could do this, but I could just sleep too. I could just go to bed. Sure.
You know how comfortable my bed is? Not my Satva mattress, but my mattress one.
It'd be a little more comfortable if I could get a new Casper mattress on that bed, but it is what it is. Hey, some updates. So the first thing is that after this episode, we will be taking a week off. So listeners, don't go anywhere, but there will be a week without an episode. We're working to make it only 1 week, but yours truly is going on vacation and can't record podcasts while
Big deal vacation.
Big deal. Going overseas, not taking my mic and stuff with me.
Dude, that's so huge, man. Is it mostly to go see football games?
It's kind of a delayed 40th birthday with me and a couple of my friends. And the one of the main reasons for going to the UK is to see my beloved Liverpool play. Although I've always been a bit of a Anglophile, and I've never been to the UK. So I'm excited.
I'm so stoked for you. I haven't either, but I'm just excited for your experience. I can't wait to hear about it.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. And I'm sure I will buy a lot of records and try to immerse myself in some of the music over there. But yeah, we'll be off for a week. And then another piece of admin is you can now donate monies to this podcast if you so choose I will post a link in the description of all the episodes. But yeah, you can become a patron, so to speak, of the podcast through Spotify. So, if you feel so inclined, it would help out. Or if you just want to pass the pod on to friends, that helps to follow if you haven't already. Like the podcast, rate it 5 stars where you can. I think we have 5 stars everywhere so far where you can actually rate.
Hey, you know what?
Which is great.
Rate it 4 stars if you think it's only worth that too.
Yeah, or just don't be a dick and rate it 5.
I read a review yesterday of somebody had reviewed a doctor, and the review said, "Doctor whatever was great. He literally saved my life. 4 stars." And the doctor says, "I don't know what I could have done to earn 5." I was like, that's fantastic.
That's perfect. That's like all the time. It's like the Yelper thing. It's like some of the best service I've ever had. Great food will come back 3 stars. Okay.
That's so funny. Have you given a bad Yelp review?
Yeah, I have, but it was like really bad. And there was a while where I was actually into doing the Yelp thing. And it was mostly positive reviews. Like I wouldn't bother normally if it was bad. I just would ignore it.
Yeah, totally.
But there's one. There's a CVS right by me. That's the worst CVS in the world. And I have a couple friends in town who also don't give bad reviews, but even gave that one a bad review because we felt there was a responsibility to warn people. Just go to a different one. This one's so bad.
Go to a different CVS.
Just don't go. And then one last thing real quick is I got my first kickback as a podcaster.
You did?
Well, kind of. I got my sweatshirt from Jason came in.
And you didn't wear it for this episode. That's cool.
I wore it yesterday evening. It's first off, it's like the softest sweatshirt I've ever owned in my life. I put it on and I just wanted to go and take a nap. It's not really a kickback, but
you won that fair and square.
Yeah. But I'll take it. It's a freebie from the podcast. So we're on our way, Donnie. We're on our way to mattresses.
Okay. One sweatshirt at a time. I am real excited for this episode. I showed you my middle of the night show notes.
You did.
Yeah.
Donnie woke up in a cold sweat, stressing that he'd forgotten some songs for this episode.
Middle of the night show notes.
It's a bit of a full circle episode for us, and you'll see why when we introduce our guests. But this one feels very always meant to be episode.
Oh, for sure. This is the one where I can't wait to hear what everyone's. Two things we say about every episode. This was so hard. I can't wait to hear about your approach. Mm-hmm. This one was so easy for me, but I still can't wait to hear about your approach.
I found this one to be one of the easier ones too, but I think that's because we've been thinking about it for so long.
Yeah,
right?
That's true.
Like I think we've been talking about this for a while too.
Yeah.
And I had a great time on the last episode. I learned a lot. John is really smart, and that was fun. But it also felt a little dense and stressful because it wasn't in our kind of wheelhouse as much. So I learned a ton, but I'm looking forward to this one where I feel a lot more confident in my approach to this, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like I said, it was this, like you said, we've been compiling this list for the last 2.5 years. Basically. Yeah, more or less.
All right. Well, with that, I guess we should introduce our special guests.
Yeah, let's bring them in. I'm excited about it.
Here at How to Make a Mixtape podcast, we are powered by Riverside. If you want to make a podcast, video interviews, webinars, video marketing, panel discussions, or even just presentations, Riverside FM is a great option for you. With great features like web-based editing, transcriptions, AI-generated social media clips, captions, and even teleprompters, Riverside makes your media project easy. If Riverside's something you want to try for your next project, make sure you click on the link in this episode's description. And now back to the show.
How to make a mixtape.
Okay, we are super excited for our guest today. A little bit of I don't know if legend's the right word, but we've referenced this individual multiple episodes. Bit of a full circle moment because our friend Shane Deagan is on the podcast today. How's it going, Shane?
It's going really well. Gonna look behind the curtain. It's 5 a.m. No, 5:07. I was late, so but
crazy early.
Nowhere I'd rather be.
And thank you.
Coming to you live from the front seat of a Subaru Crosstrek.
So, as listeners will know, this podcast kind of was birthed out of our shared love of another podcast called 60 Songs That Explain the 90's. We've talked about that on the show a bit, and I feel like you're the person to explain it. So here's my question for you, Shane. Tell the people what that podcast was and why it was so important to maybe the three of us. And then that leads right into what today's theme is, and let the people know what the theme is.
Yeah. It was Donnie, I think, that got me into this podcast. I think Donnie grabbed me in a hallway and was like, basically, tell me how much you love this podcast. And I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. And he was like, well, you're wrong. You're missing it. The boat has left the shore and you're not on it. You got to go get on this boat. And it was the way that Rob Harvilla talks about these songs and connects them to personal experiences and connects them to the larger 90s zeitgeist is it's such a uniquely positioned podcast for pop culture, for music, and for personal stories. And he finds this really cool sort of meets in the Venn diagram in the middle of those three things. And it lands in a way that I think reaches beyond music and makes it a personal thing. And I think all three of us connect to our music in that way, and we're of a certain age where those stories land a certain way. And so I've connected with that podcast in such a unique way.
Yeah, the three of us kind of bonded over our shared love of that podcast, and frankly, just talking about almost every episode and texting about what we loved about it, what we didn't love about it. Shane, you're a madman and ranked.
Yep.
So for listeners who haven't listened to that podcast, we highly recommend listening to it. It's incredible, and it's over now. It's completed, but
all 120 songs of 60 songs that explain the 90s have come out.
And so Rob has these increasingly elaborate intros that connect a broad kind of theme around a song that he doesn't reveal until later, but to his personal experience or his personal life, like Shane was saying. And they're really well written, and Rob's a writer, and that's what he does. And Shane, being the madman he is, took the time to rank every episode of all 120 episodes in a doc. Pretty much, was it just based on the intro, or was it just the episode overall?
Yeah.
The cold open.
It's just the cold open. It's everything until he says, "I'm Rob Harvilla, and this is 60 songs that explain the 90s." Okay, so let's go. Let's go top five, and bottom five of this show. Top five. Number one is Smells Like Teen Spirit, and it was an episode he held out forever. We knew it was coming. Everybody knew it was coming, but the way he dealt with Kurt and
was it originally the 60th episode?
I have to assume so. And then I think they saw the writing on the wall. They knew they were going to do more. And sort of he said he was dreading it. And then I think they were probably, his guest on that episode is Courtney Love. And I think they lined that up. And I think they were probably logistically waiting to get that done. But he absolutely crushed that episode. Number two for me was Pavement, Gold Sounds. The story about owning the mustard yellow
Che Guevara
Rage Against the Machine t-shirt and the like, all of which are American dreams, and wanting to show your rebellion to anybody who's willing to listen to you stood out to me. Celine Dion, My Heart Will Go On. That's number three.
My number one.
That's your number one. Okay.
That's my number one.
Meatloaf, Jim Steinman. I love Jim Steinman. I love those operatic songs. I love Air Supply and Bonnie Tyler and everything that he did. So yeah, that's a great intro. And then Rosa Parks from Outkast is number four, going over the records that got 4.5 mics in the source. And number five is Whitney Houston, I Will Always Love You.
The story about orange juice.
Yep, the story about there being orange juice on the plane, and why doesn't Kevin Costner get on the plane at the end of The Bodyguard? Okay, bottom five. The worst five. I'll do these ones real quick because I think we're probably all on the same page. Mary J. Blige, Real Love, the Method Man remix didn't do much for me. Notorious B.I.G. Juicy. It was about the rap skits about guys with guns in their mouths. So you don't even remember.
I don't remember that at all.
Remember this. Okay. At number 118 on my list is Guns N' Roses' November Rain, and it was about the 1988 VMAs, which you would think would be peak content, but it flew by. Number 119, P. Diddy, I'll Be Missing You. This is Rob's Sadness mixtape. And number 120, and Rob has admitted this because he did a Q&A once where he was asked about his worst episodes, and he said, Dr. Dre, nothing but a G thing. He said if he could redo an episode, it'd probably be that. And the only note that I wrote for myself on this one was, it's like this and like that and like this. And
was that an early one, the Dr. Dre one? Yeah.
It was an early episode. It was early on.
I mean, within the first 30.
Yeah. It was.
I mean, it wasn't that early.
Yeah. I don't even recall what it was, but I remember being like, yeah, this one doesn't hit.
Okay.
We could do better. We should start our own podcast.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And speaking of which, that brings us to the theme of this mixtape today. You want to announce the theme, Shane?
Today's theme is the songs that Rob Harvilla didn't do on 60 Songs that explain the 90s.
Damn straight. Are just dudes yelling at the radio saying, why didn't you do this song, Rob? Opinion of what he should have done. And he actually did a whole episode of this too, of having people call in and say you should have done this song, which was fantastic.
Let me ask you guys, did you pick songs that you wanted Rob to do, or songs that you know that Rob would have crushed it had he done the songs?
Ooh, I like the way you asked that question. I want to think both. Like, I want to think that he would appreciate and like the songs that I chose, but would have been able to do a great episode on them. I guess I'd lean more toward the second part of that question, Donnie. I think as I was picking my final four, it was like, this one would have made a good episode over, I really like this song. So I guess the second one.
I went as far as to do the songs that I wished he would have done because they would have been great episodes. And then I wrote down what I thought he would have talked about in the midst of those songs. So that's kind of my approach towards these. And also, Shane, not to go back a second, but that list of the ranking, I don't know if you have given Rob Harvilla access to that, but it has been emailed to him, and he has possession of that list. So
I tweeted at him, and I was like, "Here, random guy on the internet that opened my Google Doc. That was like, he has access. I don't know if he's looked at it or if he's trying to create at least 500 feet between him and that document."
Well, he's gotten it multiple times now. So Donnie managed to DM him and get his email, and he's now been emailed a couple times.
To answer your question, Rod, I was a little bit of a grab bag. I'm a little bit of both. I have some passion songs. I have some songs that I think make interesting stories, and I have some songs where I'm old man yelling at cloud. I mean, how is this not on your list? The other thing that I was conscious about that you didn't mention was trying to steer away from songs that he covered through adjacency. And he did such a good job of world building and telling stories and touching things that he didn't end up talking about. And Donnie, that was hard. But I got a little bit of
the fact that he did Montel Jordan. He didn't do Montel Jordan, This Is How We Do It, but he did do Return of the Mac. And it's like, well, he should have done Montel Jordan, This Is How We Do It. But it's like, he did it. No, he kind of did it.
No, he talked about how those two songs will be played at a wedding together. Forever. And
I think we probably all tried to avoid that. I can say that I know one of mine was brought up in an episode, and I'm aware of that. It was impossible to know everything he brought up. I don't know how you would know. I know one of mine was in an episode. I don't care. Like, I still think it should have been its own. So I'm still talking about it anyway.
Okay.
So with that, I feel like we should get into it. So let me read the High Fidelity mixtape guidelines here, and then we can actually get into the mixtape. First off, you got to have a killer opening track that grabs the listener's attention. Second, each song should flow smoothly into the next, creating a seamless listening experience. Number 3, the mixtape should have a good balance of different genres, tempos, and moods. Variety keeps things interesting. The mixtape should tell a story or convey a specific emotion. It should take the listener on a journey. Number 5, it can't be too obvious, but can't be too obscure either, unless that's the theme. Number 6, can't double up on songs by the same artist. Number 7, the closing track should leave a lasting impression and make the listener crave more. And as we remind all of our guests, all of our collaborators, Shane, you'll be responsible for putting these in an order after this. And with that, it's also your choice, Shane, if you want to go first or third in the rotation.
I'll go first.
Smart choice. I think that's the smart choice.
I'll go first. And we snake rotation, right? So the person who goes third gets to do 2 in a row.
We just go old school.
Oh, great job, Shane. Thanks for listening, bud. Appreciate it.
Called out.
Is this your first time? Okay, so this is called a podcast, Shane. And our approach has been the same for the last 6 episodes. I got fresh yellow Post-its for writing stuff down.
No, we just cycle through.
This is like, I like you're picking on me for this. This is like, if you don't know how a draft works and you go on a podcast with Chris Ryan, you get yelled at for not knowing how a draft works. And now I know. Now I don't know how. Yeah, a podcast works.
Because we're not a draft. Okay. We're just 3 dudes making a mixtape.
Okay. Every 3 of those criteria that I talked about, it has to be Seal, Kiss from a Rose.
that was one that one of us said we thought was going to be one of those final episodes, right? And then it didn't happen.
Yeah. I came down my final two, and we spent a bunch of time going back and forth that week on what we thought the last two were going to be before he did the final two episodes. And I said, I think I landed my final two were Friends in Low Places and Kiss from a Rose. And I said, I thought for sure he would end on Friends in Low Places, and he ended on Closing Time. Kiss from a Rose. Seal was a giant artist in the 90s in terms of sort of pop rock and crossover. He had multiple albums that were top 10 albums and with iconic singles. He early in the 90s with Crazy on adult rock radio, and then this song in the middle of the decade on just a gigantic soundtrack to Batman Forever. I can never remember the Schumacher ones, which one is which. I think that he talks about 90s soundtracks and what a cultural moment the release of one of those soundtracks is. That just an amalgamation of every genre and every global artist that you can get that probably makes no sense together. But if you put them under this label of Batman Forever, you can put U2 and Smashing Pumpkins and Seal on a soundtrack and sell 3 million copies of it.
We've talked about that, Shane. We've talked about how podcasts, as we were coming up as kids, was the best way to collect the most music. Like when you were not necessarily falling into a genre-specific listening point at that time. Like, okay, I want the most bang for my buck. I can get 14 artists.
You mean soundtracks, Donnie? You said podcasts.
Yeah, some movie soundtracks. Yeah, and even if you were getting genre specific, whether it was singles or The Crow or whatever, you could do the whole deep dive, because at that point, music discovery took so much time and so much money because you'd have to buy the record and you'd have to, or the CD, and you'd have to you'd have to spend $17 and go, okay, I'm one layer deeper into this punk rock thing or whatever. And then I got to go find the next band and go another layer. And the soundtrack gave you access to so many things, like you said, Donnie, at one time. So my first pick's got to be Kiss from a Rose. It was a giant song. It was everywhere. It was a school dance song. It was a radio hit and movie soundtracks.
The only drawback to that whole soundtrack era, because I agree with you guys, it was a great way to discover music, to like get bang for your buck, to have some variety. The only drawback is there's great songs like this one, like incredible all-time songs, whose music videos suffer because they had to incorporate bits of like Batman Forever,
clips from the movie,
the worst Batman costume ever. You've got Seal singing this incredibly touching song standing in front of the bat signal, which makes no sense. Like, you look at that now and it's like, what is happening?
To you, it might make no sense. It hits directly for me.
It hits you right in the gut, Donnie. You're like, yes.
It gets me right in my feels.
Yeah, and to be fair, like if they had done a video for this that wasn't that, it might have ended up really sappy or something. I'm not sure, but it is funny to look back now and know that this song is such its own thing now, right? Like, it's not really connected anymore necessarily to that soundtrack, right? But then if you want to go watch the music video, you're going to quickly be like, oh, okay, that was in a movie.
Yeah, that's funny. It's the same thing with the Gangster's Paradise and the clips of Dangerous Minds.
There are not clips of Dangerous Minds in that video.
No.
It is just Michelle Pfeiffer, but there's not actual clips from the movie in that video. But how gnarly is that? But you think
so
there
they got Michelle Pfeiffer to sit with Coolio and like
chair.
Sit backwards in a chair. Okay. That's just Mandela effect. But the fact that they got that, like, you could get Val Kilmer to put on a Batman suit and stand back to back with Seal, and I would think that it was clips from the movie.
That Batman suit had nipples.
No, it didn't.
George Clooney one was the nipples.
That was the.
I think the Val Kilmer one had a big.
Bad. Sorry,
I think the Val Kilmer one had the big cod piece on it. I think that's that costume.
Yep, I think that's right.
I wish. Why didn't they just put Seal in the Batman costume? I would have watched that video. That would have been a better video. Oh man, that's a good pick, Shane. It's such a classic song too. That just still kind of makes the hairs on your neck stand up when you hear it.
Yep.
It's one of the few songs I can actually sing all right too. Shockingly, like for some reason that pitch just is my pitch, and I can hit that note that he hits in that. Don't call me out on that in public ever.
Yeah. Is it the baby part? Because I want to hear the baby part.
It's the baby part. I can hit that. It's like the only note I can hit. I can't sing for shit, but I can hit the baby part. I won't be proving that to you. You're just gonna have to take my word for it.
I'm gonna hold you to that at some point in time in person.
That's a great first choice.
Am I up next, Rod? Who had seconds on last episode? I think I did. So I think that's you.
No, I went first on the last episode.
Oh, so that's me. Okay, so my first pick is going to be Superman by Goldfinger.
So here I am, doing everything I can, holding on to what I am, pretending I'm a Superman. I'm trying to keep.
And the reason it's Superman by Goldfinger is because, number one, you've got an opportunity to talk about everything that John Feldman has done, which is literally everything. You want to talk about credentials. He's still producing certified gold and platinum albums. And then you also have a chance, which is crazy to me, that Rob never talked about video games. Mm-hmm. He didn't talk much about Tony Hawk Pro Skater and like what those soundtracks did. And maybe he was a hair too old. No, I mean, no offense, but like if I think back to listening to Tony Hawk Pro Skater soundtracks and how much music Tony Hawk Pro Skater introduced me to, Millencolin, I started listening to Millencolin because of Tony Hawk Pro Skater. Yeah. So I just look at like, number one, it's a great 90s song. It's a great fucking song. I was like, do I do Mabel? No, I'm going to do Superman instead because of Tony Hawk Pro Skater. And then you've got so much to talk about with John Feldman. And like, I mean, dude, the amount that he has wrote and recorded and produced is just insane. And I feel like that could have been a hell of a cold open.
You know what's interesting about that, Donnie, is it's similar to the soundtrack thing because we're talking about the soundtrack to a video game. So it does a lot of the same things that a movie soundtrack did in the 90s. However, you were exposed to it over and over and over and over again because you're playing the game. So you're hearing these songs, right? It's not that I got the Batman Forever soundtrack. I stuck it in my CD player. I'll listen to it when I feel in the mood for it. It's if I'm playing this game, I'm hearing every single song that's on this soundtrack over and over. And you're sitting playing that game for hundreds of hours at a time in your bedroom. So you got exposed to these songs over and over and over.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I know that racing games still do that. Mm-hmm. There's still big soundtracks. We talk about Grand Theft Auto and how those influence sort of music zeitgeist around them. But though there is an era, and it's especially the Tony Hawk games where it was just top to bottom. This is what you're listening to for hours and hours and hours. He talked about playing GoldenEye.
Yeah,
he did talk about playing GoldenEye
during the Sunny Day Real Estate episode, but that's as close as he got, and I think it's a really good point. I think this is a different thing because that Tony Hawk, it's interesting that you choose Superman. I had Here in Your Bedroom on my side notes. I was like, do I include a Goldfinger thing to get into ska in a deeper way? But Superman is the song that they're known for, just because of that game.
There's a lot of artists that got just frankly like a massive boost in popularity because of that Tony Hawk game or those Tony Hawk games, right? And like Goldfinger was already kind of big in the ska scene. Like, you know, they had a couple, I guess you'd call them hits if they can be hits when you're like a ska band. But right, like Here in Your Bedroom and Mabel were both pretty good songs for them. But Hang Ups sold so many more albums because of Tony Hawk and because of Superman. And by the way, that's one of my no, I'm not going to say it because we're going to do a ska episode someday. But I love that album from Goldfinger. And I was happy for them, but I got tired of Superman. Like I almost skipped that song when I listen to that now, even though it's a great song. I got overexposed. And maybe that's the dark side of the video game stuff, Donnie, is you hear it so much that you like, I got tired of hearing that song. It's a great song objectively, but man, I've heard that song a gajillion times in my life, playing those games, listening to the record.
Yeah. Does it hurt when Shane throws back the curtain even more to how much he hasn't listened when he doesn't know that we've talked about Wipeout and how important the Wipeout soundtrack was? Because it hurt me a little bit, but it's nothing we can't move past.
No, I'm okay with it. But we have talked about video game soundtracks before on this podcast, which is kind of crazy that this is the second time now. But that kind of got me into like a more like aggressive electronic music was that game. I don't know if you've ever heard of the game Wipeout for PlayStation.
I heard about it on your podcast that I listened to religiously.
Right back at you, Donnie.
I love it. Great job.
I will say a little shot at myself here too, Donnie, is I love Goldfinger. I love that band. But as soon as you said Superman,
I love Goldfinger.
For some reason, I thought you were about to say Superman's Dead by Our Lady Peace and like go that direction. I don't know why.
It was on the long list.
It was
sure.
on my long list too. And I was like, is he going to go Our Lady Peace right now? That's wild. But you didn't.
Yeah.
That's where my brain is at this morning for some reason.
Roderick.
Is that my turn then? All right.
That's you, buddy.
With my first choice, I'm going with Popular by Not a Surf.
He'll appreciate the kind, straightforward manner in which you told him your decision. Unless he's a real jerk or a crybaby, you'll remain friends. I'm popular. I'm a quarterback. I'm popular. My mom says I'm a catch.
Recall.
And I think you could have gone many directions in this. First off, to answer your intro question, Donnie, I love this song. I love this song. I love this album. High Low is a great album. I'm glad Not a Surf had a resurgence later because they were definitely in the one-hit wonder category and probably still are. But, you know, they never went away really, and they make good music still, and they've evolved, and they're just a solid band. But this song specifically, it just, to me, says a lot about the 90s. It's got that, like, catty high school, everything's about being popular thing that felt like real in the night. That felt like what high school was to me in the 90s, at least. I think the way he could have gone a couple ways with this song if he had done it. And I'm curious if you guys have another route you think he would have taken. But to me, I think what's interesting about this song, and I'm not sure if you guys know this, but all the spoken word stuff in this song, all of it is straight up taken out of a women's teenage girls etiquette book from 1964 called Penny's Guide to Teenage Charm and Popularity.
Being attractive is the most important thing there is. If you want to catch the biggest fish in your pond, you have to be as attractive as possible. Make sure to keep your hair spotless and clean.
It's like real, which is crazy because some of the advice is insane real. And sounds sarcastic and made up, right? And they make it sound that way intentionally in the way they read it and stuff. But I like this idea of how, and this isn't unique to the 90s, but you could focus on the 90s, when you can appropriate or be heavily inspired by a piece of literature or a movie or something that makes a song and that song becomes a hit. I've always found that very interesting. So like this song straight up lifts from this etiquette book and turns it on its head and flips it and makes it something that's ridiculous and sounds like insane, but yet kind of real too. Like I can see high schoolers thinking that. But yeah, you've got other shit, you know, there's probably a lot, and I didn't have time to research all of it, but, you know, like One by Metallica is basically this movie called Johnny's Got His Gun. Mm-hmm. Scentless Apprentice is based on a book called Perfume, and Kurt just like basically wrote a song, like a song version of the themes of that book. Basically, like I love stuff like that. And Rob is a great researcher, better than me. And I'm sure he would have found a lot more stuff. And I think that would have been a really interesting episode, like how artists can take a piece of literature, a movie, and appropriate that and adjust it and turn it into something different that's more relevant to its time. Now, that's what Popular does for me. Plus, it's just a banger of a song.
That's really, there's something interesting about that pre-internet era, too, where your source material isn't as discoverable. And that rumor or somebody pointing out your source material isn't going to exist in the larger conversation. And so you can have that sort of niche holding. Also, that music video featured full frontal male nudity.
Yeah, it did.
If Rob wanted to take it that way.
Yeah, that was a wild music video. I watched like a mini like little YouTube documentary on that music video once because I guess the whole circumstances around it were wild. Like that school that they record that at apparently it's in California, and it is in a ton of music videos because basically what happened is like that school board or that principal started giving permission to studios to use their high school as like the high school in music videos, and it just became a thing. So they were just known as an easy school to get like a contract with to make a music video at. But that video specifically, like the principal or like whoever is in charge, the superintendent or whatever, was like furious after that video came out about the video. They had like real students in it, like the football players and the cheerleaders were actually football players and cheerleaders from that high school, right? So like the superintendent was pissed about that video when it came out.
Oh, that's fascinating.
Hey.
Whoa.
Good job, Rod. Good job, man.
I'm trying to think is there another band that has like a hit that's more out of step with the rest of their catalog?
Yeah, Jimmy's Chicken Shack.
Jimmy's Chicken Shack there, yeah. I would, well, Lynn, I feel like that Steal My Sunshine, I don't think is really reflective of what they do. For some reason, Eels, Novocaine for the Soul pops in my head. It kind of fits with what he does.
Yeah, that's a good one.
But when you listen to his other stuff, it's way more out there and like all over the place, like weird, eclectic folk rock shit. And then the Novocaine.
They fall into that
they kind of do.
Yes, but they can just kind of jump around from genres.
Yeah, for sure. But Novocaine for My Soul just feels like a straight up, just kind of like dark indie song, right?
Yeah.
So I think that might be another one. That was on my long list for this too, and
that's a good one.
Didn't make the cut. But yeah, this is very out of step for Not a Surf. But it kind of felt okay in that album in High Low. It kind of made sense a bit. But overall, for Not a Surf, this is very not what they do.
Yeah.
But I still love this song. It's great. So I'm glad you guys approve.
Yeah, it bangs. Yeah, my mom says I'm a catch is just an all-time.
Such a great line.
All-time line.
Seamus, back to you, buddy.
Okay, second pick. I'm going to keep it in a couple different ways that we have already addressed, but I think were overlooked in the larger 60 songs pool, and that is Bryan Adams. Everything I do it for you.
You know it's true. Everything I do it for you.
From the Robin Hood Prince of Thieves soundtrack. And I think the conversation that I want him to get to is about the ubiquitousness and reach of the radio format of today's hits and yesterday's favorites that no longer exists. And that is because of the population of a generation ahead of us was so large and had so much buying power that boomer music was going to be the music of choice for the populace for like 60 straight years, even as they aged up and out. So they had artists that they followed and maintained popularity, even if they went from starting out as guitar rockers to sort of dying in a memory care facility doing slow, unapologetic sap music. There's just this huge thing, and there's this wave of people, like Chicago is probably the greatest example of a group that started as a rock group with a horn section, and we're doing really sort of funky groove stuff that ended up just being Peter Cetera singing
You're My Inspiration
by the end of their career. Yes, you're the meaning in my life. But there's this, every town had at least one of those stations that was today's hits and yesterday's favorites. And it was just like, here's radio for your mom. And even before the sort of real death of radio, that format was fading. But Bryan Adams, Everything I Do It For You is such a adult contemporary radio smash.
Yeah. You know what's crazy about that, Shane? I've never really thought about this. I don't know if there's like causation here behind this or what this is, but you hear the term a lot. We've said it before in this podcast. Like, this song could have come out at any time and it'd be a hit. What we really mean is it's just a well-written song and people of any time could appreciate it. This is different, where when you blended those songs on the radio, you legitimately didn't know when some of these songs were from. Like, this Bryan Adams song could have come out 15 years earlier and I would have been like, yeah, totally, that's when it came out. And when you play it alongside songs that came out in the 80s or in the late 70s, it's even harder to kind of know, unless you know, right? Unless you're like, oh, this just got released, here's a new song by Bryan Adams, right? But if you have no context and you just listen to those stations, it could have, those songs span 30 years and any of them could have come out at any time. Not all of them, but you get my point.
Yeah, totally. And I think that there's a disorienting thing there. Like, we were all young people listening to the music of our parents. And I think there's a disorienting thing of where you don't know that over a course of 30 years when that music came from. There's the Beatles and there's Fleetwood Mac and there's sort of everything else in between. And this is for sure one of those songs. It's really well written, really well crafted. It's got clips from the Robin Hood movie in the music video. He's standing in the woods for the music video, but otherwise it just sort of floats in this era of here's music for people older than you.
Yeah, that's what my mom listened to was the adult contemporary like hits of today and yesterday station. That's what I came up on. It's like, get your Whitney Houston, your Michael Bolton, late 70s, soft rock stuff. And
what was your station for where you grew up? What was
there was a couple rock? And it changed over time. So I'm not sure what it was by the time I was in high school. There's a station called WZPL, which by the time I got to high school had changed formats into just straight up more current pop music. So it was pop. It was the pop station, but they kind of switched to they tried to be trendier. They changed their logo and it was all like modern pop. But when I was a kid, it was 70s, 80s, and today soft rock, right? It was Whitney Houston, Celine Dion, Amy Grant, that stuff. But it was also probably the Carpenters and, anything that came out in 1975 to 1980 as well. And it was also like this, like Bryan Adams would have been on there 100%.
Yep. What was yours, Donnie?
101.9. Yeah, the mix. I mean, I think that's still playing at the dentist office right now. Somehow they just have recordings of that.
I like the idea of a dentist office or a doctor's office legitimately liking the music of that time so much that they had to record entire days worth of the radio to play on loop.
They have it on cassette tape.
Yeah.
Ours was called KLSY, which it took me until my adult years to realize that was classy. And that's the classiest thing imaginable.
There was also Kiss, but that was was that a syndicated thing that hit later?
Yeah, ours is pop. Our Kiss out here is pop.
Yeah, that's probably an iHeart thing where they all sort of came together. KLSY did the syndicated Delilah show at night, the call-in show where you can tell your love sob stories, and then she would play Peebo Bryson for
Donnie
you.
Called in Delilah.
That was the loop, yeah. I did call it a Delilah.
Often. He was a regular.
It happens.
She was like
listening to it late at night, like in my bedroom, sad about a girl.
Yeah,
it happens.
She's like, Donnie. She's like, I'm getting my weekly call from
stop
from Donnie in Chicagoland. What is it this week, Donnie? I love it.
Yeah,
Donnie, I'm not playing Nine Inch Nails. I tell you that every week.
Okay, so Donnie. My next pick, so for sure. I know the order isn't important because it's all Shane's responsibility, but for some reason I feel a heightened sense of awareness in delivering my order of these four, but I'm going to do it anyway. I'm going to go Rex and Effects Rump Shaker.
All I want to do is zoom, 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 and a boom, boom. All I want to do is zoom, 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 and a boom, boom. All I want to do is zoom, 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 and a boom, boom.
And Rex and Effects Rump Shaker, which I'm sure this group already knows, was Pharrell Williams' first production credit. He was 16 years old when he produced this song. And I feel like there could have been such a funny story about 16-year-old Pharrell behind the board recording Rump Shaker, or just in the studio, or just any kind of anecdotes about Pharrell at 16 could have made for a very funny cold open. I mean, it's a summertime anthem, all I want to do is zoom, 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 and a boom, boom.
And a boom,
that's what I want to do. So
that's a great pick, Donnie. You get the bookend of that whole decade too, because you get Teddy Riley and you get the Neptunes, and you sort of bridge those two things. And that's such a good pick.
We could have talked all about how Rex finishes with the letter X with two hyphens in the title, and it's an N instead of and.
Oh, he loves a spelling thing. He also would have loved that Bryan Adams, everything you do, I do it for you. The I do it for you is not in the parentheses. The everything I do is in the parentheses, which always was weird to me. I don't understand that. He would have loved that. But yes, he also would have loved Rex in Effect. Donnie, I think he also could have gone like a child prodigy route, or prodigy's maybe strong, but because that was that whole thing with the Neptunes. They like won a talent show, right? And like in Virginia Beach or whatever too. And that kind of got them noticed. I'm sure he could have pulled other like 16-year-olds who were doing something back then that still ended up with a career. Although I say that now and I can't think of anybody off the top of my head. Criss Cross's career kind of fizzled out. So
what are you talking about?
Show your pants, Donnie.
What are you talking about? Show your pants might be my new favorite podcast quote.
That's a new low.
Hey, show your pants.
Hey, your pants on straight. That's also every track that ever uses that saxophone intro just goes like. You get Back to the Hotel. You get that Public Enemy song. You get the Jay-Z song from Kingdom Come, his like career relaunch.
I hadn't thought about this song in years, and it was big. Like, I remember this being on the radio, and he says, all I want to do is zoom, zoom, zoom. What the hell is that? Like, that's the most like radio safe, like, I guess it's an innuendo, but I'm really not even sure what he's trying to say with that. Like,
man,
does
that would
he
have
know
made
what
for
he's
a
trying
great
to say?
Cold open of what does it mean to zoom, zoom, zoom?
What
and
does it
boom,
mean
boom.
to zoom, zoom, zoom? Is he saying he has to get over to the boom, boom very fast? He's going to zoom in his car to get to the boom, boom like as fast as possible? I really don't know. Oh, man.
Start the decade, zoom, zoom, boom, boom, and you finish the decade with a zigga zigga.
There you go.
You learn nothing in between.
Oh, the zigga zigga of it all.
Mm-hmm.
I guess that leads to my second, which is the one that I said, I know he brought this artist and I believe the song up in an episode, but I feel it warrants its own episode. But it's You Gotta Be by Desiree.
You gotta be bad, you gotta be bold, you gotta be wiser. You gotta be hard, you gotta be tough, you gotta be stronger.
And I don't do this, but I would consider waking up every morning to this song. Like, this song just makes you want to like do something with yourself, like be something.
Like, it makes you want to zoom and a boom boom with yourself, Ron? Is that what you're saying?
No, that's not what I'm saying. It makes me want to like
okay.
be the best version of myself, Donnie.
Got it. Okay.
It's not a sexual thing. He talked about this in the Cardigans episode.
Yeah, because it was all the tie back to Romeo and Juliet.
It
when he talked
was,
about missing you. Whew.
And that's not my direction with this song. Like, to me, what this song is or represents is this feedback loop that I guess happens all the time. But what happened in the 90s was this positivity feedback loop where, you know, the middle class was doing well. You can get into the economics of it all. People have talked about this, but people felt good in the 90s for the most part, felt safe, even though there's a ton of other bad shit happening too that we like to forget about. But music, there was more like major key positive music in the 90s. And I think that is a loop where you hear that stuff on the radio, it puts you in a better mood, you feel better. Because you feel better, you're more inclined to make positive sounding music. And I think you got a lot of that in the 90s. And this, to me, is like inspiring. It makes you kind of feel happy, meaningful lyrics. I don't know. I think that's the direction you go with it. And that's also not necessarily opinion. Like, there was a paper written on like the last like 50 years of pop music and how it moves. Like, the key that songs are in move with the mood of the population in the 90s was like the height of major key, happy, quote unquote, happy sounding music. And since then, it's been way down. Like, the 2000s and even into now is like some of the lower points in that. So I always found that interesting. And I'm sure Rob could have done something really, really cool with that. I'm not sure what the cold open would have been, frankly, but I think that would have been the kind of the subject of it. And, you know, people do need to be bad and bold and brave and cool.
Is this pop or is this adult contemporary?
I think I think it was a pop song, but I'm not sure.
I mean, it opens with harp, doesn't it? Isn't that whole intro, or is it just like...
It's a piano. It's just a piano, I'm pretty sure. I could be wrong. Also, the music video for this, I remember...
Super cool video.
She's like standing in a white... Yeah, very cool. Like, she's just in a white room, right?
Yeah. I think her outfit changes. Like, doesn't her outfit go back and forth from black to white? And like, it changes the contrast really aggressively. I remember that's a really cool video for sure.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think there's multiple of her at times in the video. I kind of want to watch it now. I didn't watch it in preparation for this, but she just seemed very cool to me. But like beatnik cool, not cool like Missy Elliott cool or like hip cool. She seemed like poet beatnik, hangs out at coffee shops and wears black turtlenecks and reads a lot of poetry cool to me.
Yeah.
That's a song that I associate Oprah. She was on Oprah and it's sort of an Oprah book club song. Like, hey, this is about positive attitude. And I remember her performance on Oprah and how much Oprah was into what she was doing. And I only remember that with 3 songs from the 90s. This is one. Livin' La Vida Loca is one. Leanne Womack. What was that song called? I Hope You Dance. If you get a chance to set it out or dance, I Hope You Dance. And that song, I remember Oprah loved that too. So you're in good company, Rob.
Are you coining the term, the genre Oprah core right now? Is that something that's happening right now?
Well played.
It's controversial.
Well played.
It's controversial. And it is hopeful pop. It is meaningful life direction that gets that stamp.
I know that you don't mean it this way, but I feel slightly attacked right now. Like I legitimately love this song, and now I feel like I'm a middle-aged woman in 1994 watching Oprah in my mom jeans. And
you were we're doing a pants check for everybody. You were an empowered person, and you're living your fullest through your music.
I appreciate that. You sound like Oprah right there, and I appreciate that as well.
Seamus Deagan, back to you.
I'm going with another one that came up on our text thread as he got to the end of his list, and that is In the Meantime by Space Hog.
Yep.
I don't know if the two of you remember this, but this song was NBC's cut to commercial music for the 1996 Olympics as a cultural moment for the U.S. to host the Olympics for the first time since LA in '84. Like, that was a really big deal. It was a sort of a peak television cultural moment, and Bob Costas tossing to commercial on network television and then playing the Space Hog hook every single time as a 16-year-old kid that was like, I'm into alternative rock and punk rock music. I love this song. And I'm still sort of young enough or surrounded enough by the Olympics culture to be super into watching swimming and track or whatever is on television at the time. Like, this is a perfect blend for me.
Was that the Atlanta Olympics?
It was Atlanta. It was, and you had the bombing thing in the park. Like, there's a big talking point there around that moment and what the Olympics meant. And it wasn't Dream Team. Dream Team was 92 in Barcelona, but this was our Olympics. And this is such a bizarre song. It's such a weird band, like out of nowhere in the middle of the 90s to do a like unapologetic sort of peak Bowie, T-Rex, like Roxy music. We're doing glam. We're doing 70s glam rock, but not in an ironic way, in a really straightforward, like, we write big hooks. And
with 90s production too. Like that, like the production on that song specifically sounds like a slightly more polished, like Siamese Dream production a little bit, like the fuzz guitar that's somehow also very, very clean sounding while ultra fuzzy. Like, I don't know, it's very modern production. I'd never really thought about it in that glam way that you just said, Shane, but now it's playing in my head and I'm totally hearing it. That's really interesting.
Yeah. There's an element there of, Pulp was also there doing sort of unambiguously.
They were pretty overtly glam though.
Sexy.
Like, they presented themselves that way.
Right. But that hook, that bass line, the chorus, it's so big. And I just have always loved that song.
You weren't gatekeepery at the time, Shane, where you were bummed that your subgenre of music was getting national exposure? Like, you weren't at the point yet where it's like, I don't want everybody to know what I think is cool.
I don't know that that's a really good question, because I am and was that way with certain things for sure.
Yeah, everybody was.
But I think I recognized that I got Space Hog from the radio. I didn't find this thing. It wasn't a band that I was in on that then broke later. It was like, and I don't know that I could put my finger on what it was aesthetically that this band had no scruples about being a huge radio rock band. That was their influence and what they were trying to do. I definitely was, hard and fast on the Nirvana book about being true to your ethos and not selling out and whatever that meant in the 90s. I don't think I applied that to Space Hog though.
It's a great song though. I love it. I'm glad somebody had it on here. I thought about putting it on, and I know they talked about it and Rob had talked about it before, or a guest had, but it's a good choice.
I'm up. The fact that we've talked about bands. I don't know I guess this band falls into the Chicago genre of a band that's just still chugging along. And the fact that he didn't do any of the big three from Aerosmith that he didn't do Crying, Amazing, or Living on the Edge, and didn't talk about Alicia Silverstone and Clueless. And there was no mention of what Clueless meant to the 90s, and missed the opportunity for like massive video production. So my song is Crying, because that was the first Alicia Silverstone one of the three. But like that whole, I was way into the second wave of Aerosmith. Like that was just such a huge piece of pop culture at that time, because your dad listened to Aerosmith, your dad listened to Toys in the Attic. You know, if your dad was kind of cool, you know, you knew of the
Sweet Emotion. You knew of like all of the old Aerosmith, and then they came back and were really popular again.
Like, that doesn't happen.
I would almost say they came back 3 times, because there was that second wave of them, but then they also had like Jaded and stuff like that, and the Armageddon soundtrack later on. So there was like 3 waves of Aerosmith, because there was like, it was basically 70s, 80s, and 90s Aerosmith all hit different, and they were all
3
huge.
waves of Aerosmith.
Yep. It's official.
Yeah, they were a part of that Super Bowl halftime show in 2000, the Ravens Giants Super Bowl, and I will never forget that, because Nelly wore a half Ravens, half Giants jersey on stage, and it was like Nelly and Britney Spears and NSYNC as contemporary and Aerosmith playing together.
That goes together.
They had so many waves. That when they came back in the, like, they were already done when they came back in the mid to late 80s with the Fincher video for Janie's Got a Gun. Like, that was my first introduction to Aerosmith as a 7 or 8 year old, or however old I was at that point. And it was like, oh, that was your dad's band. And I had no frame of reference for that. It was just like, yeah, this is like modern rock radio.
I remember, so I grew up on classic rock. That feels like a common thing for people of our age to say, but my dad was heavy into classic rock. I listened to a lot of 70s Aerosmith growing up. And I specifically remember being at my cousin's house in Michigan at like Christmas time. And he had gotten Big Ones on CD and was so into it and so excited about it. And I had a bit of a weird, like, is my dad cool moment? Because like now my cousin, who is 1 year older than me, so basically my age, and we're you know, preteens, and he's listening to this new Aerosmith stuff, or like newer Aerosmith stuff, right? I mean, that Big Ones was the greatest hits, right? But it had like the later stuff on it. And I just remember being like, oh, it's okay to like, 1, it's okay to like Aerosmith. And 2, it's okay to like new Aerosmith too. They're not lame, apparently. Like, they're cool again, or still cool, maybe. And then I also saw Aerosmith on the Jaded tour, where they had weird ass like robot woman like on their stage and all this stuff, like the whole Armageddon era. So I think you're right, Donnie. And it is wild that Clueless didn't come up. Did Clueless not come up at all?
I don't know that it did.
I swear I recall him talking about the Alicia Silverstone videos, but maybe he didn't. Maybe that was like in the what did I miss episode or something? I don't know.
What's crazy is that if you look at their discography lineage, we're talking about the timelines between when they were cool and when they weren't cool, like, or like the waves of Aerosmith. Toys in the Attic came out in 1975, and then there was still an album in 76, 77, 79, 82, 85, and then Permanent Vacation was probably the next big one, and that was 87, and then Pump was 89. So it wasn't like they ever really went anywhere. They just kind of sucked and then got good, I guess. Or like they were like
hits and no hits.
Yeah.
They just probably stay the course, and they're doing like blues-based rock. They're doing their Rolling Stones thing, and the culture sort of weaves in and out of wanting that, you know, and we wanted something heavier, or we wanted something poppier or whatever. We just come back to Aerosmith.
That's fair, Shane, because I feel like they changed less than some of those other bands to stay popular. Like Chicago changed to stay relevant. Heart changed a lot to stay relevant, right? Like Jefferson Airplane into Jefferson Starship into Starship. It changed a lot. Like, and so you know what? Props to Aerosmith because they did kind of stay in that like blues inspired. I mean, they had evolved a bit, but it got a little more kind of pop rock, but it kind of always sounded like Aerosmith. I mean, Steven Tyler can throw a scat line in any song in any era and make it work. Scooby Bop, the bebop, whatever. Like,
all right, here's a couple bananas analytics. Okay, so Dream On has over 1 billion streams on Spotify, and Aerosmith is still averaging 21 million monthly listeners on Spotify. That is nuts.
Wow. That's a good one, Donnie. I like the music video angle too. Now I kind of want to go back and watch those old Aerosmith videos.
Do you remember the video for Amazin' was like the first soiree into virtual reality?
I remember that.
Yeah.
I'm up next, I think, right? Yeah, I'm up next. Interestingly enough, this kind of would have fit into my Popular by Not a Surf one, and that this is inspired by literature too, but that's not where I'm going with this. And this one just came to me like 3 days ago. It wasn't on my list and it popped in my head randomly. I didn't even hear it. It just appeared out of nowhere. So it was meant to be In the Airplane Over the Sea by Neutral Milk Hotel.
But for now we are young, let us lay in the sun and count every beautiful thing we can see. Love to be in the arms of all I'm keeping here with me.
Once I thought of it, it kind of blew my mind that he didn't talk about it. I see why, because it actually wasn't big in the 90s. Like, it sold nothing. Came out in 98 and sold nothing. Jeff Mangum became a recluse, and Elephant Six Collective kind of stopped doing anything, and they just disappeared. But to me, that's a massive opportunity for Rob to talk about art that's not appreciated in its time, right? And becomes influential. And the 90s is so influential to everything that came after on a very obvious level, right? Grunge to post-grunge to hard rock, all that stuff. What 90s hip-hop did for hip-hop, like all these things are in our faces. And then you've got what is considered by many like maybe like the holy grail of indie rock albums that comes out in the 90s and nobody gives a shit about it at all. And then all of a sudden in the 2000s, it is mandatory listening for anybody into anything approaching indie rock or singer-songwriter, underground singer-songwriter, you know, like I know he did Daniel Johnston. I know he talked about Daniel Johnston. It's not the same to me though. Like it's quirky, folksy, underground singer-songwriter, but definitely not the same thing. Yeah. So that's my ad.
No, the art that's overlooked in its period is a really deep well. There's a lot of material there, and there's records that go on like a 10-year loop that you're like, nobody talked about this, and 10 years later they're going to talk about this, and in my lifetime, Gang of Four was one of those where like all of a sudden everybody was doing like post-rock dance. And so they were all like, yeah, Gang of Four is the number one band. And there was a full era. It's probably the Arcade Fire era where everybody is like, that Neutral Milk Hotel album is the most important album of the last 10 years. And everybody can go back and point to it. There's a lot of material there. It was a great record.
Yeah, it is. It's a fantastic record. And it's, again, just not I did some research on this because I knew it didn't sell anything when it came out. Apparently it was fairly critically acclaimed where it was reviewed, but it also was kind of equally critically panned. Like it was a mixture. Like there were people that were like, oh, this is amazing. This band's going to do big things. And there were people that were like, this just sounds like funeral music and it's insufferable.
Where is it getting reviewed in 1998?
It wasn't a lot that I recognized, to be honest. There was a couple publications that I had heard of. I don't remember off the top of my head, but it's on the Wikipedia. You can read some of the reviews. Most of them aren't from any, like, it's not like the NME or Rolling Stone was talking about In the Airplane Over the Sea. That's not what it was. But New Decade hits and like Pitchfork gives it 10 out of 10, right? And like it becomes what it is now, which is like, you know, it's, even people who haven't heard it now know that album cover. Even the album cover, it became a meme. It became like something the internet shared all over the place. And more importantly than that, it's not just that it wasn't popular and became popular. It became influential. It's that it's great. Like you said, Shane, it is a great record. It is a fantastic record. I remember, do you guys remember Girl Talk?
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
I remember there being like a couple like samples and Girl Talk songs from this record.
Yeah. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. There's.
Yep.
I have to admit, I think I knew Girl Talk before I knew In the Airplane Over the Sea, and so that was a moment of hearing the record and going, oh, that's from the Girl Talk. That's where he got that, which is not true of most of his samples.
Yeah, totally. I'm not sure where I don't know or remember when I got into this band, but it feels, I don't know. I can see why Rob maybe didn't do it. It feels a little overlooked to me. It is late 90s, but it also it's such a unique story and it's such a unique band. And there's just a lot that's different about it. And I feel like it would have made for a good episode that doesn't really touch on anything that had been in a previous episode that he did. So I think it would have been a good one for him. And anybody listening who hasn't listened to Neutral Milk Hotel, but maybe has heard of them before, you just go listen to them because it's great. It's great music.
Good pick, Rod. Good job, buddy.
Love that one.
Seamus, we're back to you, buddy. This is your last one.
This is my last pick, huh?
Well, you got an honorable mention, but this is the last one that's on the tape. No pressure.
Let me round this out. I've got Space Hog, I've got Bryan Adams, and I've got Seal.
Mm-hmm.
I feel a little hip hop coming.
Got a couple hip hops on my list. I'm gonna do Jump by Criss Cross. And I think what he talks about is, I think he talks about Barney Rubble rapping in the Fruity Pebbles commercial and pulling off the I'm Barney Rubble and I'm here to say that I love Fruity Pebbles in a major way. I think you have to get there. I think you have to get to sort of the novelty of rap music as a popular thing. You can talk about the pants or the young kids or whatever it is that you're selling fashion through music. But I think it's about novelty rap. And he did Ice Ice Baby and he did You Can't Touch This. But I think that there's like an extra thing here because there was they weren't pop stars. There was like a connection to authentic music that they did. And there was with Hammer as well. But Hammer was sort of like unapologetically like, I'm going to be the biggest star in the world, and I have the gold lame outfits and stuff. And Criss Cross was like, felt like a bridge for white communities to access pop rap in a more authentic way. So I'm going Jump.
Outside of Vanilla Ice and MC Hammer, what else would you say falls into pop rap? I mean, we got Snow, but that's a track. That's not an art. Like, I mean, I guess for Jump, there was still only one hit. Or for Criss Cross, there was one hit. It was Jump, really. But I mean, there was Waiting for the Bus.
Missed the Bus. Yeah.
Missed the Bus.
Yeah. I think that I don't actually know off the top of my head. It's like you kind of, there's an era of rap hits. Like my mind went to Baby Got Back.
Okay. But Sir Mix-a-Lot had credibility.
I know. As a Seattle guy, like he was our rapper, but there's a whole era there of rap music as pop. Actually, probably the rest of the DJ Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince catalog, the like Parents Just Don't Understand, the what are those guys called? The House Party guys, Kid and Play. It's really. It's not novelty as much as it is party rap.
Yeah, that's a cool way to put it. Yeah,
happy party rap, like dance songs. As a vehicle to get hip hop and rap into the mainstream, and even like De La Soul, he talked about De La Soul distancing themselves from Me, Myself, and I. Like that's not who we are.
They hate that song.
We're not the Daisy guys. We're actually credible and into this art.
Mm-hmm. There also was a lot of like pop, like R&B rap crossover stuff that put hip hop into the pop sphere a little more, right? Like Mariah Carey, Usher, people like this that are doing those things, which actually Connection, Jermaine Dupri produced Totally Crossed Out, and then obviously did Destiny's Child, Mariah Carey, Usher, all those things. I think this was his first record that he produced was Totally Crossed Out.
You can point to all of that Atlanta stuff, and it comes from there. And there was some sort of connection to authenticity in the future of rap. one of the songs, I didn't put it on my list, but one of the songs that I had thought of was "Do the Bartman." And
that
so
would have been great. I can rap that whole song right now.
These ideas of like commercial, whether it's the 85 Bears or whatever, but like, hey, we can connect with youth culture by making a rap about whatever it is we're selling, you know? And Crisscross felt like one step closer to hip hop to me than Vanilla Ice.
They're so interesting to like. I was the age, like that was me, right? Like I was 9 years old when Totally Crossed Out came out, which was the demographic they were going after, 9 and 10-year-olds. It hit hard. I listened to the shit out of this record. They were total industry plants. Like they were put together to be that. They weren't that talented, but they also intentionally made them kind of feel like a safe version of a gangster kind of rap, right? Like they weren't wearing matching outfits and doing dancing and stuff. They were wearing Oakland A's jerseys over hoodies, like leaning on Impalas in videos, trying to look gangsta while singing about missing the bus so it's safe for me to listen to. You know what I'm saying? So like they were put together to do that, but that's even really interesting. So it was, I mean, maybe it's hard to name like what the pop rap was, but that was pop. Like they were put together to sell records and to be an image of something, you know?
For sure. It's a commercial sort of bridge group to get you into whatever Jermaine Dupri is doing next, you know? And
I will say I did also buy their follow-up album, Da Bomb, and I listened to the shit out of it. So I consider myself a
so edgy,
true
Rod.
Crisscross fan. That's after they started wearing their clothes the normal way, you know. It's a little harder of an out. To be fair to those guys, they were trying to be legit hip hop artists, right? They weren't trying to be like plants or they tried to make it. They had a comeback, kind of a comeback too, right? Like
really?
And yeah, I remember.
Really?
Well, comeback's a strong word. I mean, it did. Like, you know.
They put out another album.
It's hard when your lead in is the backwards close. Like it's hard to come back from that. And
Rod, do you feel that's true? That your lead in is that it's hard to come back from the backwards close?
I don't know. I think you could also go in the direction of like this paved the way for like DeBrat and Bow Wow and like really young artists who had talent too. Like, so there was a thing of like, oh, you can be really young and do this too. Like DeBrat was talented and good and maybe would have been around without Crisscross, but it was a lot easier for people to envision a kid rapping basically because Crisscross had a massive hit with Jump. So, and every kid is jumping on their bed in their bedroom listening to that song.
Great call, man.
The amount of times we've talked about Crisscross on this podcast is wild.
So many.
Never the actual music though until now.
Would you say that we're totally crossed out?
This podcast should just be called
Well
Totally
done.
Crossed Out at this point. All right, Donnie, your last pick. Yeah.
Okay, my next one is the coolest, scariest girls in high school wore the October Rust Typo Negative t-shirt. And so Typo Negative, black #1, parentheses, Little Miss, Scare, close parentheses.
She's got a daylight speedlight with no spot out too.
There's so much to talk about with Typo, and the fact that if you look back, it's pretty alt heavy. Like obviously, and I mean he does Pantera, he does Metallica, so he does do some metal, and I guess Typo is metal. Like if you search metal, Typo comes up. And you have so much to talk about with Peter Steele and Playgirl, Peter Steele as an entity of a person, just the giant man that he was. I mean, what was he, 6'7" or something crazy?
He was kind of like a goth heartthrob too in the 90s, right?
Totally.
I mean, he had that like, it was like Danzig, but a little bit prettier, although it kind of depends on the photo too. I'm looking at some photos of him right now where he's not looking so great, but there was definitely a time where he had that total like, Trent Reznor had that thing too, right? It's like, oh, you can be goth and dark and disturbing and creepy, but girls can be into you.
That's what I'm saying. Like the coolest, scariest girls in high school wore the October Rust t-shirt. That was like, you saw that shirt and you're like, that's a cool chick that I'm afraid to talk to. She listens to cool music that I don't know about. I'm scared of her, but I wish I had the confidence to go talk to her.
There's a dark sexuality to all of that stuff, the industrial stuff, the Depeche Mode, like that.
Totally.
That young girls accessed, that young boys, it wasn't a part of their, probably it's confidence is what it is. Willingness to say it, to say I have these feelings and can access this point. But yeah, all of that stuff. He didn't really talk industrial at all outside of.
Didn't he talk about KMFDM in a couple episodes?
Maybe. I don't recall. I mean, obviously he did the 9 Inch Nails episode.
He referenced it a couple times elsewhere and I think he even acknowledged that he hadn't talked much about industrial outside of 9 Inch Nails, because I even remember him bringing up like God Lives Underwater in multiple episodes, just off the cuff, and Stabbing Westward, which, I don't know if either of those bands are actually industrial, but industrial adjacent rock, right?
Yeah. Yeah, there's a whole thing. There's a moment where Typo Negative and Ministry and Skinny Puppy and like basically anything that where your band T-shirt was always printed on a long sleeve tee.
And there's a graphic on the sleeve.
Yeah, you're in a certain genre, and that was giant. And Donnie, you're totally right. It was the scariest girl in school.
Yeah, and their favorite movie was The Crow. And
do you think he intentionally dodged Marilyn Manson altogether?
Oh, damn. Because I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, there's no Manson song. Like, The Beautiful People is not, and The Beautiful People is 96. So. Did he dodge Manson intentionally? I would assume so.
I think yes, because you can't miss that without doing it on purpose.
Right. I mean, I'm sorry to interrupt you, Shane, but like there's the whole piece where like he dipped his toe into the R. Kelly pool with the Aaliyah episode. Like we talked about it when we were chatting about the episodes, is that he always got controversy adjacent. He didn't delve too deeply into anything. He did a bit with the Michael Jackson episode, I mean, he avoided Marilyn Manson altogether. And that was high school for me. Like those were that was the scariest stuff you listened to in high school, So I wonder if that was, I guess he hasn't talked about it in anything. He hasn't talked about it in the episodes he should have missed. He didn't talk about it in anything. I'm curious as to see if that was intentional.
It has to be intentional and fair play, because there's so much material to work with. Why be unnecessarily
risky?
Like maybe if that's your goal, but like there's just so much. Like we're doing a podcast episode because there's like more stuff you could have done, right? So like maybe there's some stuff you probably couldn't avoid. I mean, how can you not talk about Michael Jackson? Like it's just too big. But do you have to talk about Marilyn Manson? Apparently not, because I didn't even register that he hadn't talked about Marilyn Manson until you just brought it up, Donnie. So we obviously got by without talking about him. Yeah. That is interesting.
It's crazy to think about. Like, I mean, I would put Typo with Manson in the same pool. Yeah. So to see that he went through and didn't do The Beautiful People or didn't do, I mean, shit, Manson had 3 albums out in the 90s. Smells Like Children, Antichrist Superstar, and Mechanical Animals were all in the 90s, and we didn't get. And like, if you think about where he was in the 90s, we didn't get a single song. I'm assuming it was intentional.
Had to be. All right. Well, I'm going to close it out on a pretty depressing note, and I'm realizing now I probably should have done this in a different order, but just don't close the mixtape with this, Shane, even though we're closing the podcast with it. So I'm going to go with Brick by Ben Folds 5.
She's a brick and I'm drowning slowly off the coast and I'm headed nowhere. She's a brick and I'm drowning slowly.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Ben Folds 5, not a depressing band. Brick, heavy song. And it feels kind of obvious to me that the episode is about how music can get people through trauma and difficult times in their life, right? And like Ben Folds wrote this song to help himself process something that happened to his life. I would hope he wouldn't harp too much on Ben Folds' experience as much as it is like, hey, music, writing music, listening to music is so important to getting through grief and trauma and these things. And I think that's the episode. I also think Ben Folds was just massive in the 90s. And if you look, he doesn't have a ton of streams. He doesn't really have a bunch of quote unquote hits, But I remember everybody loving Ben Folds. Like everybody talked about Ben Folds 5, and then Ben Folds went solo at some point. I don't remember when. Like his concerts were a big deal. I don't know if you guys ever saw him live, but like people,
yeah, he was kind of
chomping at the bit to go see Ben Folds. Like his concerts would always sell out. Like maybe he was the only real like piano rock guy. Like was he? You know what I mean? Was there a lot of piano rock in the 90s? I'm probably forgetting somebody. It seemed like
he was the Chris Carrabba before there was a dashboard, where like people were singing along at Ben Folds concerts and like it was super crowd engaging. Like if I remember, I didn't personally go to any Ben Folds show, but I remember seeing footage of like Ben Folds concerts, and it was like everybody was singing every song, or there was a lot of breaks where the audience participated, and it was almost like he was Dashboard before Dashboard was Dashboard.
Interesting. Yeah, it feels very cult following, but too big of a following to be cult. Just like committed following, like you get with jam bands a lot. People have that with Ben Folds 5 and Ben Folds in general. I think good songwriter, a little bit of that nerdy rock guy thing that hit in the 90s, right? You got your Rivers Cuomo's, you've got your you can be Elvis Costello made it look cool, but it was okay to just be nerdy in the 90s and play music. It's a great song. Like it is an amazing song. It's just sad, and it feels like it would have been a bit of a depressing episode, which he did a couple. I don't know. It feels it's a quintessentially kind of 90s sounding song too. You hear it and it sounds 90s. And if he didn't want to go the trauma route, he could have gone the piano rock route or something. I guess I'd gone with a different Ben Folds song. So closing it out on a real happy note.
Really moving us along, Rod. Thanks, bud.
Sorry, guys. I was just afraid someone else was going to pick Popular. I had to open up with it,
It was a smart move. It was
a strategy.
It was a good call.
It's not a draft.
Not a draft, but sometimes you have to. Okay,
sometimes you got to go
me
for
eat my word,
value.
Shane.
Yeah.
Honorable mentions. Seamus, go first. What do you got for an honorable mention, buddy?
Stevie B, Because I Love You, the Postman song. I love a good parenthetical. And this is a 1990. We talked about that adult contemporary soft rock radio. This is a slow dance, school dance song for all time.
Give one more. I know you've got another one.
Okay.
There you go.
I had The Beautiful People on my list. That felt like a big miss. I had The Sign by Ace of Base.
Oh, great job.
He gets to Max Martin through the Backstreet Boys.
Yeah.
But that was gigantic. That's like a top 10 single from the 90s. He didn't talk about. And then one more, I got to get a shout out to Superdrag for Sucked Out.
Oh yeah.
Another band that that was a one-hit wonder, but just like Nada Surf, that put out 5 more just incredible power pop records that are so good, and probably the closest lineage outside of REM, probably the closest direct lineage to Big Star and the Memphis stuff. I love that band.
What about you, Donnie? What were your honorable mentions?
I had 2, and I know that he talked a lot about, I don't remember what song he talked about, Kool in the Gang, where he talked about Summer Madness and that sound sample. I did have DJ Jazzy Jeff and Fresh Prince Summertime as one of mine, and there would have been so much to talk about with that. God, he could have gone so deep down, like so much stuff, and like he could have avoided a lot of the Will Smith bullshit if he wanted to. Like he could have gone and like done so much more of what he has done versus the current controversy. But like, I feel like that would have been a really great one for like seasonal music or something along those lines. And then my second one was Jamiroquai, Virtual Insanity. Big one hit wonder, but like the fact that that we didn't, that would have fallen so much into that dance music. There would have been so much to cover with that one.
Oh, you fucked up, Donnie. That should have just been one of your choices.
I know. I wanted it to be, but
that's
you chose
good.
Brick.
Well, I didn't think about Jamiroquai for some reason, or I probably would have picked that instead. I had that album too, and I don't know why I didn't. And I just watched a video on YouTube about how they made that music video and how great music video still is. Like 2 weeks ago, and somehow that didn't pop in my head to doing this. So I guess we all fucked up on that one.
It's interesting, Donnie, that both your honorable mentions have that sort of 70s barbecue roller disco sort of thing to them. There's a vibe there on both of those tracks. And Will Smith becoming the biggest action movie star of the decade.
Dude.
For the last half of the decade is so much material. And
Wild West.
I will have love for Jamiroquai forever for being like, I'm going to make like disco music in the mid 90s with a didgeridoo, and have a hit.
Yeah.
So mine, I already mentioned Novocaine for the Soul by Eels. I had that on here, but my other ones were, and I didn't go with, I wanted to do this one really, really bad, and I couldn't figure out what it would have been. I can't figure out what the episode would be, but Standing Outside a Broken Phone Booth by Primitive Radio Gods.
Yeah.
Whatever. I'm not sure what direction to go with that, so I just left it off the list. And then the last one I'll say, but let me ask a question first. Did he really touch on rap rock? He touched on nu metal, which had some rap rock in it. He mentioned Rage, but did he actually do an episode on like rap rock? I don't think he did. If he didn't, that was a miss to me, and I had Down by 311 on there. I mean, you could pick something else, but you know, just straight up like, right? Like the confluence of rap and rock and hitting like it happened before the 90s, but like it sold records in the 90s.
Who else would you throw in there, Rob?
I mean, there's a link to the Beastie Boys probably in that, right? And you can start with the lineage of it, but like he talked about Rage from going to that concert and like the political side of Rage, but he didn't talk about the actual like merging of genre of Rage Against the Machine.
He didn't do Kid Rock?
I don't think he did Kid Rock. It was a thing, and it was some new metal stuff, right? Like Limp Bizkit was like rap rock. Like you had that stuff out there. And it was just interesting to me that he didn't really touch on those two heavy hitter genres, like the two main, I guess, genres of music and popular culture merging and creating like an offspring genre. He didn't really touch on it. So
Did he do anything on sampling? Because the Primitive Radio Gods thing is a cool entry into sampling.
I don't know that he called out sampling as like an art form, but he would definitely talk about where samples came from, I think, on episodes when he was talking about like hip hop and stuff like that.
Yeah, he talked about that Cool in the Gang piece. I think that was
right.
in...
Yeah, and he talked about Summertime on the basketball camp.
Yeah.
Those are the honorable mentions. All right, Donnie, you want to give the rundown?
Yeah, let's knock it out. Okay, so we got Seal from a Kiss from a Rose. Great job, Seamus, kicking it off. Goldfinger, Superman, Not a Surf, Popular, Bryan Adams, Everything I Do It For You, Rex and Effects, Rumshaker, Desiree, Gotta Be, Space Hog, In the Meantime, Aerosmith, Cryin', Neutral Milk Hotel, In the Airplane Over the Sea, Jump by Crisscross, Typo Negative, Black Number 1, and Brick by Ben Folds 5. Good luck burying that one somewhere in there, Shane.
Good Lord.
Yeah, that song's a brick. Pulling the mixtape down is what that is. Sorry, guys. Should have gone with Jamiroquai. My bad.
I'm
too late now.
The flow. I'm thinking about the flow here, and I'm pretty intrigued by Typo Negative to Crisscross. Okay, I got some work to do.
How to make a mixtape.
All right. Well, thank you, Shane.
It was great to have you, buddy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, you guys. I appreciate you getting up early in the morning.
Been looking forward to.
We appreciate you getting up early in the morning.
Getting up early. Jesus. We were looking forward to this for a long time. I'm glad we could finally all talk about this officially and not just in a series of text messages. Everybody, go follow the podcast if you don't already, and tell your friends about it. And that's all I have to say.
Wait, we got to leave them with a poll. Do we have a poll for this one? Do we have a question? Do we have something else? Do we want them to contribute the one that they think they missed?
Also, or I could just say how big of a bummer was the last song from Rod, and then just put like 1 through 10 on there and let
that's a
people
good call.
decide
Yeah.
how big of a bummer ending with Brick was.
Yeah, good call.
There's the poll. There we go.
I love it. Great job.
How big of a bummer, 1 to 10, and leave what we missed in the comments.
Yeah. There we go. All right. Thanks, guys.
Right.
Thanks, Shane.
Thanks, guys.
Bye, dudes.
Bye-bye.
Bye.